Welcome to another draft science presentation. Comments, I think, and a little bit on the two slit, but just more about this general inability to have a civil conversation with any of these these fundamentalists. That's what they are. They react just like religious kooks. They don't make any rational counter arguments. But anyway, I did find something searching around on different little two-slit type subjects. This guy, so his name is Info Philosopher. I'll leave a link below. Has incredible technology. He's got like 7 computers, got a screen in the back. Probably could play a little of this, hopefully.
Take us back to that picture. Here's, if we know it went through one slit or the other, we get this kind of a picture for thousands of photons or electrons. But when both slits are open, I pointed out the maximum is now at the center between the two slits, and there are now more interference fringes. And these probabilities now, and here's the new thing that I am hoping to add to this discussion.
Oh, I didn't know he's saying something new.
I'm trying to say that these waves, I'll come over to my cell phone screen.
Yeah, there you go.
These waves in here are fundamentally, in quantum mechanics, not the water waves. They are the solutions to the wave equation that Erwin Schrödinger gave us, and they have high spots and low spots, interference, which gives null points where nothing is predicted and so forth. And Max Born came along, and using an idea that Einstein had thought of.
Okay, so he's just, I'll let him finish some more of that, but I mean, he's not really suggesting anything new and brilliant here, is he? But anyway, new interpretation of the interpretation of the interpreters and how they interpreted the interpreter. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, you have to really impressive. Not very many views for what are really, like I said, the technology is pretty incredible. I wish I had a studio. Damn. Anyway, yeah. So even on this subject, he just pointed out how the math does this and the math does that, and I just pointed out in my previous videos how the math predicts things that aren't seen, that don't exist in the actual pattern, and it's just this. They just say it. So as long as they keep saying our math is perfect, everybody's just going to keep believing their math is perfect, even when you can show it not to be perfect. So it's just, it really is a religion. So anyway, well, we'll play a little more of this since I'm on it, and then we'll move on. So I'll link below to this guy. They're very well done videos. It's got on free will, different subjects. It's mostly philosophy, but there is some physics.
Without publishing it, but he told a lot of friends, and I think we can see hints of it in some papers, which I'm trying to locate when I do the book on Einstein's work. These waves are probabilities. They are, because quantum mechanics is a statistical theory, says Einstein. It can tell us nothing about individual particles, so we can't ever know the path, the slit through which a particle will have gone, or its path getting from the slit to the back wall. These are not knowable, and Einstein described this situation as saying quantum mechanics is, quote, incomplete.
It's superficial in the sense that you just said it. It's probabilities. There's a probability of throwing, like if you were a baseball pitcher, there's a probability of you throwing your perfect strike. 1 in 10 pitches might go exactly where you intended to go or something. Probably it's I could throw baseballs into a garbage can, and I would have a certain skill at it, and over time there would be a certain probability that I accomplished the task. It has absolutely nothing to do with the circumstances, the actual variables that decide how well I do it, how good my muscle memory is, how all kinds of things that are going to decide how proficient I am. So everything that has a probability, it doesn't come from some mysterious place, it comes from some circumstance that exists. So the simple argument is you're just all saying there's no possibility this is just a right hand left glove kind of thing. There's no possibility that this has something to do with the circumstance of the like there's a probability from getting from point A to point B, and you have to go through an obstacle course. You can understand that the obstacle course makes certain things impossible, like getting there at your fastest running speed, because you have to go up and down things, and there's no way you could do that. So there's certain things that can't be possible. And to say, well, we have math that includes all possibilities, even though they're not possible. You put in your probability math, but the probability is really zero. You can pretend it's something non-zero, but it's zero. It's not going to ever happen, and ever, in a gazillion permutations, and yet you still pretend it's a non-zero. When it's a zero. It's never going to happen. So this is, this word probability has, it always, for a rational mind, it's like the free will argument. Okay, for a rational mind, probability is a kind of a silly word, because there's no such thing as rolling pure dice. There's no such thing as a purely random event. Everything happens because of a pre-existing circumstance, and it's cause and effect. And you people just don't want to pay any, you just don't want to look for the cause. You're just saying, I give up. And I'll play there's a quote in the comments section from Feynman. And all Feynman's saying is, I can't think of it, so therefore it can't be thought of. I'm the most brilliant man in the history of human beings, so if I can't imagine what the answer is, there must not be an answer. And that's all he's saying. And people are quoting that as if that's a brilliant statement by somebody. Somebody says, if I didn't think of it, you can't. And you're saying, what a brilliant guy, what a fantastic quote. This is how stupid you are. The guy just insulted your fucking intelligence and you don't realize. Anyway, we'll play a little more.
It doesn't know all of what classical mechanics told us that we should have been able to know, that the path of a particle when we fire a projectile is completely predictable, completely...
Right. There's no classical mechanics, okay? There's obviously more primitive mechanics. And we can add to it without turning it into multiverses and Copenhagen and all kinds of wacky bullshit. You can have rational materialism, some sort of notion of cause and effect, science based on cause and effect, or science based on woo and bullshit. And that's the difference here. There's no classical versus what? Modern religion? It's religion. Religion isn't a modern idea. God of the Gap Answers is not a modern concept. That's a really old concept. Jumping to the wackiest, stupidest, craziest solution to a problem, yeah, that's something people could figure out how to do 3,000 years ago. We, today, should figure out how not to do that. That's exactly what we don't want to do. And Einstein was smart enough to say, hey, that sounds like spooky action. That sounds like bullshit. Even though his own bullshit was bullshit.
But when a particle like an electron or a photon is sent into a wall and then into this two-slit experiment, we don't know them. But what we do have is this wave equation, which gives us a set of probabilities. Right,
and it's the simplest probability in the world, on, off, at a specific angle. I mean, you couldn't set up a more simplistic thing to call your special wave magic. I mean, in the sense that, well, at any time there's an on-off pattern, we're going to call that interference. Well, it's just, I'm sorry, but that's just, that's a mistake a 10-year-old shouldn't make.
About the various possibilities. So think of the possibilities as the locations on the back wall. Think about the probabilities of landing at the different places.
Yeah, why don't you just think about the two slits and the fact that they're confining the light, and that there's a circumstance that there's light that's going to go near the edges and light that's not going to go near the edges. And that the light spreads more the more you confine it, which would sort of indicate that that also means, when you confine the space, that the probability that the photon went close to a surface goes up. So as you make the hole smaller and smaller, the probability that the photon, if it was traveling a straight path, semi-randomized, that the probability of the photon going next to a surface increases coincidentally as the light diverges more. And no, don't pay any attention to that. Don't pay any attention to the instrumentality. Don't look at the obstacle course at all and just pretend that there isn't one and that there's some probability that you're going to only go half as fast as your best running speed for no reason. No, you're going to go half the fast as your best running speed because there's an obstacle course you're going through. And you're just pretending there's no obstacle course. Let's all just pretend there's nothing to see here. The slits don't do anything. The photons are in control. The simplest thing in the universe has all of the power. The complex material thing you're shoving it through doesn't mean a thing. And that's all you're doing. Closing your mind to the obvious answer and closing your thought process to even investigating the obvious answer, that the obstacle course has something to do with the outcome.
As given to us by the solution to the Schrödinger equation, which gives us this wave pattern throughout the experiment. Now, these patterns are here given only the geometry, the boundary conditions of the experiment. They don't depend on whether a particle is coming in at the moment. Okay, this is now a deep forward step, I believe, in our attempt to understand quantum.
Okay, I think he's just saying Heisenberg now. Now we're just going to pretend a particle isn't a particle, it isn't in the real universe, it's in some sort of amorphous space, and we don't even need them after a while. We don't even need the photons to exist, and we'll create the pattern. It's just horse shit. So anyway, I guess I shouldn't watch it. Sort of just pissed me off. Anyway, so link below to that guy. Looks quite interesting anyway. Lots of, you know, it may be a little too much information, but it's good to see in a sense. So anyway, yeah, that's enough. So there was a previous comment on the subject of light and heat being the same thing, and somebody deleted their comment, I suppose. He did some spiel about how space suits are made out of vacuums, like a thermos bottle. And I'm not even sure that's right. I think they're more like bubble wrap, like in reverse. Like they're little vacuums. But anyway, I don't know. You know, spacesuit technology has probably advanced a lot since the last time I looked. You know, like 1969. But anyway, sort of missing my point. The argument on the relationship between all heat being some sort of radiation. The point is that obviously if there's big things and there's little things, the little things, to get the big things moving, the little things have to hit it. So the movement of the big things is made up of a lot of hits from little things. And so there's, in a sense, a captured little thing, a bunch of them in the movement itself of the big thing. So obviously the big things have like a million little things worth of power in terms of conveying heat. So obviously when external atoms are banging into something, they're conveying a whole bunch of energy with every impact because they have mass, and you know, they're conveying a bunch of force at one time. But the point is what goes into the thing that gets hit is more movement, and the movement's always going to end up being, in the end, radiated as force. So I don't think there was any. I don't think. I mean, obviously, I pointed out how it's sort of semantics, and it just kind of generally speaking depends on what you're focusing on. And I'm just saying I'm trying to get the point understood that the matter bits don't have any innate force in them, in the sense of any. That's the wrong way to say it. They have plenty of force in them, but it's not directed. And until you break down the matter, that force is held and locked. It's locked in the atoms, and it's not going anywhere. And so it's always an external source that's creating the vibrations between the atoms. Alright. That we call heat. But the heat is being created because of the force inside the substance. Alright, anyway. So I imagine this is the cowboy, another sock account, so we just delete it. If in Bedlam had retained anything from his high school, middle school education, he'd know that work actually has a technical definition as dW equals F times dr. And again, that's hardly technical. some vague notion of work in some vague notion of what form it's in, Watts. You know, uh, Watts or heat, idiot. But of course, this dumb conception of words takes precedence as usual. I don't know. So I'm the one with the dumb conception when I'm saying, I mean, especially on this subject of work and heat, just think about how many different ways those things are expressed in physics. How many terms they have for the same force. Calorie, Kelvin, Fahrenheit, lots of different scales, lots of different, completely different ways of measuring calories. You know, it's just but I'm the bad guy. Yeah, fuck you. By saying that, that just makes it all untechnical. Takes precedence over the usual. So he can say that this is vague language, and then say that this is as good as saying life is love. How dreamy. I'm just pointing out that, to me, if you're going to settle for physics that's that mushy, look, you think it's okay. You got plus and minus signs, and you've essentially got them on the wrong place. And that's okay with you, to leave it broken. And leave it to him to give a massively ironic spiel afterwards. Well, in your opinion, fuck you. That's my opinion. Fuck you. Ugh, useless trolls. Alright, I don't think there was anything here. So this is Lorenz again. I really don't want to talk about Lorenz. I don't even want to talk about these things called, you know, whatever they're called. I mean, how you say Lorenz contraction. I can't remember the term for the Lorenz whatever. But this whole idea of inverting mass and saying, there, I have a new equation. Transformations. These transformations are just bullshit. But anyway. So the J. We already did this, but so this is the Ken comments. So you know, we'll bother with that. So this mute idiot. Yeah, mute this. So no, just another snarky, useless troll, waste of timer. So the double slit asshole said, well, its obvious start is that this person doesn't have a tenth of Miles Mathis reading and writing abilities. Well, you don't know how well Miles Mathis reads, so fuck you. He apparently has never made any personal appearances anywhere. Although he does have a thing with oral storytelling, kind of like a cultist. So again, it's a cult to sit there and make an argument on the internet in a video form. So that other guy that I just showed, he's a cultist. You know, this is just such crap rhetoric. You know, these people should be, you know, really. There's some parts of the Bible that make sense, and stoning assholes probably does make sense. How do we know you're not Miles Mathis? I mean, just what a waste of fucking goddamn time. I mean, obviously, I pointed you to a link where the two pictures are next to each other. You can't figure it out, and you're really fucking stupid. Alright, so then the J posts this idiotic comment. Don't push me, you will lose. So I invite you to make an argument, and you call that pushing. Clearly, we disagree. I mean, you think all this mumbo-jumbo of, you know, magical gravity bend forces, and then you think time is a dimension somewhere and you can wormhole your way through it and all that crap. You believe all this quantum bibble about many worlds and Copenhagen. Which one is your favorite little fun theory? So yeah, I'm going to push you, if that's what you want to call it. I invited you rather politely, but you don't find that you find that pushing? But yeah, you know, I'm going to make shit out of you. So yeah, grow the balls for a live conversation, and I'll make you look like the asshole you are. Fuckhead. Douchebag. You don't have answers for any of these questions. Go ahead, explain your Huygens theory. Go ahead, explain how you have evidence that it exists. And go ahead, point me to all the brilliant lensing evidence. Fuck you. Push you. Yeah, I'll push you. You'll lose. Anyway, mute this. Hey, Doug, so you Miles Mathis or what? So another waste, just absolute crap comments. Alright, so the guy says Albany. Yes, well, you could look it up on Google, but yes, okay. The capital of New York is Albany. Yes. Just kind of doesn't make much sense, does it? It's only, whatever, 200 miles from New York City. But yes, that's the capital of New York. Someplace 200 miles away from New York City. Anyway, you are Miles Mathis. You can't fool us. So again, just what the fuck? Just such a creepy little fucker wastes people's time with that mush. Alright, so this guy says, nice experiment. Did you read the book QED from Richard Feynman? Well, I don't think that's actually a book. I think it's just a collection of lectures, right? So I've seen all the Feynman lectures. So yes, the other book of the 1960 whatever lectures, I've seen all of those 5 million times. I've played clips from them over and over. That guy I just linked to shows the Feynman clip where he's doing the two-slit experiment wrong. I mean, fuck. Where he says no one understands quantum mechanics. You know, he admits that it's bullshit. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know what to say, but I remember I listened to the audio book of his The World According to Feynman or whatever the fuck it was, and it was just so much full of personal bibble. It didn't have any physics in it, so it was just, you know, I was sort of disappointed because it just was a waste of my fucking time. Anyway, he doesn't know how to read. Well, that's brilliant. Yes, well, you're scoring points. So, you know, I'll keep some of these brilliantisms of yours for later, you know, and I'll just post. These are the great counter arguments that have been made by these assholes. So, you know, I'll put it next to my two-slit argument, and this is their counter argument. You know. Anyway, I haven't read that particular book of Feynman. So this guy, John Walker, asked this asshole if he's read it. Well, like I said, it's not, you're just reading video text. I mean, it's, you know, it's been cleaned up a little because, you know, Feynman makes a few oral mistakes now and then. I've read Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. So, yeah, that might be the one I read, I audio booked, and, you know, it was just a fucking waste of time. As well as several textbooks on relativity and many journal articles on quantum mechanics. Well, I don't know exactly what a journal article on quantum mechanics would exactly involve, except for some insanely complicated experiment that you know, you have no evidence of any of the assumptions made about what they're actually doing with their entangled photons or something. I have read over 170 books in the first quarter of my life so far. Impressive. Maybe not. I don't know. I understand most of the math behind general relativity. Well, good for you. Then maybe you can explain the bent space part. I mean, the part that actually has to do with some mechanism besides the inverse square law and the speed of light and the fact that the sun is also processing. So why don't you show me how there's something in general relativity that has something to actually, that there's actually a thing called, there's actually something not related to the physical fact of the inverse square law. Why don't you show me that in the math? Just perversions of the inverse square law. And you can't hold a candle to my knowledge on the topic. So shove your condescending attitude. So again, this is his reaction to a simple thing. Did you read it? You know, amazing. Condescending attitude where the sun don't shine. Well, I'd say the same to you. You're posting this rubbish on my fucking videos as response to actual specific points being made. That the two-slit pattern in light doesn't have the correct mathematical wave form. And you can see the difference when you go look at what electrons do versus what photons do. You can see the glaring difference between the two patterns. Why don't you explain that? Why don't you explain why the math doesn't get that right? Okay, instead of doing this pretentious crap about how many books you've read. Alright, do you know this guy is an ass clown, right? He claims the double slit pattern is just two single slit patterns superimposed. Never said that. I've said that it's the two patterns, but I've pointed out clearly that, you know, when you have one slit, you have two surfaces. When you have two slits, you have four surfaces. And this center surface is going to communicate the pressures here and here through this surface. So the wider you make this surface, technically you could say the less effect there's going to be between this surface and this surface in terms of the communication, the more dampening. But the smaller you make this, the less dampening there's going to be, and the more this is going to change the pressure. So it's just like charge. I've actually made a video and said these exact words. This is 10,000 volts. This is 5,000 volts and 5,000 volts. And they have a different pressure because of that. Now, you can't understand that? But, again, more lies. This is more, I never said what he said, which is, I mean, quite obviously the two patterns are imposed. It's all, in the sense that there's two sources, idiot. These two slits, I mean, these two surfaces and these two surfaces do come out of different orifices. You know, you can't understand that one slit plus one slit equals two slit. I mean, obviously they're two patterns superimposed. The point is whether that superposition or that combining happens at the slits, or whether, as you think, it's some sort of wave thing that happens in the atmosphere, which is provably wrong. Well, again, it's not what I said, so you didn't. This was a straw man argument. Put fake words in my mouth. Pretend I said something I didn't say. Pretend I didn't say exactly the opposite and explain exactly the opposite in videos before, which I did. Okay. He denies that the math predicts the pattern. So again, another lie. I pointed out quite clearly exactly what variables I agree with, and I even agree with the fact that there's an angle in the math. I just don't agree with your notion that it comes from some silly Huygens bullshit. And I explained what my alternative theory is for an explanation for why there's an angle. Because electrons move, and when they move, they don't move straight when they're under pressure. And that's your sine theta angle. So where did I say that? Where did I deny that the math predicts? It doesn't predict shit, so predict is a silly word to use. It describes a relationship that exists between the frequency of the light, the width of the slit, and how much electrons move. And he thinks that interference cannot measure changes in lengths. Interferometers cannot measure changes in lengths of the light beams. Again, more lies, right? I mean, I point out exactly what I think is the cause. That is, they think they're measuring a phase difference in the frequencies of light beams. That somehow two light beams are going through and so they left at the same frequency and somehow they come back and they're off. And they're measuring this little difference between 300 nanometers that are on and this little tiny fraction of a difference in the phase of the two light beams. And as I pointed out, what's I think more logical to think of is the fact that the light's diverging. Okay, so as it moves through space, it's not parallel. It actually is separating, diverging, and they're measuring the reflective index differences. When that light gets to go a good distance, it diverges quite a bit, and then when it returns, the angles are quite different when they're refracted. And you can measure little changes, movement, because that changes the divergence over a long distance. That's why they're 1.5 miles long. Fuckhead. Anyway, cannot measure changes in lengths of the light beams, even though that is the whole point of interferometry. Right, I did the experiment on my porch, so I have videos, the most recent ones on interferometer, 1 and 2, I think, and I'll be doing some more. I actually do the experiment, show it on my porch, just using a piece of glass as a magical beam splitter, and it works perfectly well. And I pointed out how the Newton ring pattern is created without the two beams ever interacting with each other at all. You don't need two beams to interact. You just need the one beam to reflect through the glass. And when it does, there's two surfaces on the glass. It creates a bunch of internal reflections and creates the pattern when it's reflected back through. So, I do the experiment. I point out how where are you saying the interference is? I couldn't be more clear in the video. I say, where are you saying this interference takes place? Where does a single photon, when I send it into the interferometer, a single photon, where does it split into two? Where does it interfere with itself? That's quantum mechanics, by the way. I don't want to have to point that out to you, but quantum mechanics doesn't say that two different photons can interfere with each other. That's not in quantum mechanics. So you want to explain to me where in quantum mechanics there's some theory that different photons interfere with themselves, with each other. So first show me that evidence that two different photons can be made to interfere with each other, and then show me, when you find out you can't find that evidence, then show me in a diagram of the interferometer where you think the single photon splits into two photons, goes two different paths, in a waveform, okay, and then recombines as a photon. Why don't you show me where that happens? Fucking cunt. Anyway, and he thinks that the whole point of making him a conspiracy theorist. So another outrageous claim. So if you disagree with their religion, you're the devil, you're a demon, you're believe that 9/11 was an inside job, and you believe the earth is flat because you don't agree with your bullshit, your fantasy wacky theories of Copenhagen and multi-universes and time dimensions and wormholes. If somebody doesn't buy that crock of absolute shit, black energy, dark matter, all this fucking bullshit, then you're going to call them a conspiracy theorist. That's how fucking lame you are. You putrid pile of shit. Alright. He also denies that there are mirrors on the moon. I mean, I did videos, actually showed, I pointed out how the telescope shoots the laser beam to the moon, hits the reflector, and when the beam goes there, though, it hits a whole, like, 500 square meters of space. It's not like the laser beam goes right to the little reflector. No, the laser beam diverges a ton. So it lights up a whole big frickin' acre of the moon, and yes, the reflector happens to be within that acre, so a little tiny bit of the laser light comes back. So again, just lie. I mean, these are just overt lies. He also denies there are mirrors on the moon. Well, they're not technically mirrors, but they're reflectors. But anyway, which NASA lies about. So again, why does that even make sense? Where did I say NASA lied about anything? Claiming they can't measure the speed of light by reflecting a laser off the non-existent beams. How do you reflect a laser off non-existent beams? How does that even make sense as a sentence, you fucking idiot? The speed of light by reflecting a laser off these non-existent beams. Oh, do you mean reflectors? Of course, Gary says this is a lie. You can't even tell what you think I'm lying about. Do you think NASA's lying? I mean, they have pictures of the reflector, okay? They have the picture of the astronaut standing there, and here's the little reflector they put on the Earth. I mean, on the moon. There's pictures of it, fuckhead. Which logically entails that he thinks NASA is lying about the laser reflecting light off the moon. It's not even NASA doing it. The telescopes do it. Which also means they're probably lying about the Apollo mission. So another outrageous, bizarre complication of his accusations into some other complete nonsense where I've never even said anything close to that. I've actually defended the idea that we landed on the moon against the truthers out there saying that slop. So I've actually had to waste my time arguing with people that were, frankly, I had to ruin some friendships over it, shithead. And this is the crap I get from assholes like you in the first place. So maybe he's a moon denier too. So another outrageous lie. Just outrageous fucking lying. Alright, so we're just gonna... You're done here. Yeah. Quite completely done. So we'll just get rid of the superfluous extra shit. I mean, you people, you can't make a counter argument without just overtly lying. Okay. Alright. I've just started to calling physics deniers like Gary flat universers. Well, I'm calling you dirty, ignorant cuntwad. So you gotta. That's all you are. You're a trollish piece of shit, an ignorant little loser who can't make a real argument. You're so defeated. You can't do anything better than to do this silly. I'm gonna mock the color of your socks. You're just a useless, petty creep. All right, last one. Alright, since one of your idiot commenters brought up Feynman, I thought this would be an appropriate moment to share this little quote. And again, this is just such evidence from my side, and he thinks this is somehow evidence on his side. The double slit experiment is a phenomenon which is impossible to explain with particles, and which has in it the heart of quantum mechanics. Richard P. Feynman. So again, all he's saying is, I'm really, really smart, and I can't think of how any of this could possibly happen without magical wooey explanations like photons have dice and they roll them. They can figure out where they're supposed to go. I can't think of any possible explanation besides that, so therefore that must be the right answer, because I'm smarter than everybody in the universe, and if I didn't think of the right answer, there can't be one. Surprise, surprise. And you're eating that shit up. Something that's just based on the fact that, oh yeah, it doesn't occur, it's impossible to explain. So again, Feynman has thought of all the possible explanations, and he's disposed of all of them with perfectly rational arguments, and therefore can declare it's impossible that there could be any other explanation besides my wooey bullshit about magic photons and their magic powers. I mean, you people are just such amazing pieces of shit. Alright. Amazing shitty shit. Alright, so that's enough of that crap. I did want to go a little more on the heat thing, but I just don't know if I got enough to bother with a video yet. Let's see. Atoms lose force bits for more distance between atoms. Yes, less distance, more force. See, so it's the whole thing of things getting cold. And in most cases, cold means smaller. Things contract, and the contraction is basically the removal of the force bits between the atoms. And water being the exception, a couple other things being the exception, but that gets more complicated because they're trapping, liquid water inside the ice crystals, inside the matrix of it, and so they're stuck with the space. Once they freeze, they're stuck, creating bubbles inside of the ice, and that's why it expands rather than contracts. But with no point, there's no point in explanations on that one particular aberration. But that's what everybody just focuses on, right? If there's one exception to the rule, then they say fuck the rule, instead of explaining why there's an exception. And the exception isn't really an exception because there's a gimmick, there's a catch, there's a reason why there's an exception to the rule. Oh, God, So anyway, so not a single rational argument on the subject, just typical fucking shit. Low grade from low-minded, petty, trolly pieces of crap. So anyway, Jay, anytime you're willing to hash this out in live conversation, I'm willing. Pussy. Okay. So, enough. More than enough, actually. Until the next time, and such, so forth and whatnot.